freaks? 10 times 1 minute this morning, nothing crazy, nothing special, but it's baby steps and it didn't hurt. So that's a good sign. Keep moving, eh? So earlier in the week, I asked you to put in the comments what your issues were and I would try and help you in the comments, but I thought that's fucking stupid. Why don't I make a video and actually help you? I don't know, I thought it was a good idea and maybe it'll become like a new series on the channel. I don't really know. If you have more issues, put them in the comments below and maybe next week we can do the same thing again. Just like Q&A Mondays. Pretty cool. Now in my experience, 90% of issues related to running related injuries all come down to load management. You're probably doing too much to actually be able to recover from. And so step one really is to find what you can do that you can recover from. And the only way that you can do that is by taking a fucking deload week and just chilling out and starting again. You can't figure out what's going on with the car if you're going flat out down the highway. You have to pull over and see, which wheel's fallen off. So for anyone who doesn't have these issues I'm going to talk about, all you have to do is take a deload week and analyze what actually is your weaknesses and what's going on and start to rebuild from there with a new intervention, because the previous intervention, which was you just running, is not cutting it. Like the definition of insanity is to just do the same thing over and over. Yeah. You get it. Okay, let's do the first one. First one. Pain in the lower right abdomen and hip for the few months now. No findings on an ultrasound. Well, so luckily you've had an ultrasound, which means that you can cancel out really sinister stuff that's going to take a lot more than just exercise to actually improve. Things like a hernia or like a straight up muscle tear itself. Maybe like an avulsion fracture, meaning that the tendon itself is pulled out of the hip bone. That can also be something that can give you this kind of issue. It could also be the case that maybe your pubic symphysis, the disc that sits between your two pubic bones, is irritable, maybe, but I don't know where they did the ultrasound and if they actually checked. But if you push on the pubic symphysis, basically look up the anatomy. I'm not going to film me showing you how to do it. Actually, that's pretty stupid. But look up the anatomy of the pubic symphysis and push on it and see if your pain is there. If it's not, if it's further into the hip where the muscles actually attach and into the abdomen, then maybe you're dealing with more of like an adductor issue or a hip flexor issue. Though I would probably suspect that it's likely to be some sort of tendon issue in one of the adductor tendons or the hip flexor tendons. Luckily, the rehab protocol I'm going to show you is going to cover all of those anyway. But if there's nothing structurally wrong with the hip, we're ready to just absolutely crank it. But once again, we're going to get the load right. And if you've been doing Copenhagen's and they've been too hard, we've got to dial it back a little bit and see how we can progress you back to running really consistently, all right? Okay, so step one, we're going to get into the Copenhagen's. Now, the full Copenhagen looks like this, where you would pull it up and you would just hold. But we're going to start with that as round 2, okay? The first kind of round or phase that we're gonna go with is off the knee. Okay, so it's gonna actually, by bending the knee, we're shortening some of the adductor muscles and we're biasing the ones that only adduct the hip and don't cross the knee, okay? So we can do isometrics there. 3 rounds of 45, a couple times a day, just to get it to settle down. Tendons really like this kind of stuff. The full shebang. These are actually kind of hard if you hold them for long enough. Okay, so once you can do those comfortably, we're going to change it up and start to combine the hip adduction and the rotation and stuff that you kind of get when you're running that's going to really piss off this hip. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come up, okay? We're going to come back down into like a plank and then come back up again, yeah? Down into a plank, back up again. Down to a plank, come back up, okay? Now, once you start to get pretty comfortable with those, we can start to add in some plank variations just to improve your core and hip flexors. But what we can do is actually do it off a single leg. Single leg planks are heavily underrated. So all you do is take one leg off the ground. Oh, now I'm just gonna add in one at the end that I find just makes your adductors and your groins absolutely indestructible, okay? You go both legs in the air, like this, and then actually we can probably drop that one down. It doesn't really do anything. Keep this leg as straight as you can, and we're gonna drop this leg out and back up. And there you go. Okay, next injury. Insertional Achilles pain on both sides and calf soreness when running. damn, both sides is pretty grim. Now, insertional Achilles tendinopathy is quite a tricky one because you're getting two kinds of load getting put through the tendon. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so you have your ankle, okay, and the Achilles runs here. It attaches into the calcaneus bone. Now, if the tendon itself at the insertion is really sore, it's getting two different kinds of load. So you're getting the load through the tendon in this direction when you're running, but when you get into dorsiflexion, that's this movement here, what tends to happen is that the tendon itself gets compressed into the bone as well. And so the tendon is getting pulled in this direction and it's getting compressed. That's why insertional Achilles tendinopathies are really annoying. So what you have to do is do exercises outside of that compressive zone. So all you're really focused on is the linear pulling of the tendon, and you can progress slowly over time. But if you have it in both feet, it's probably likely that you need to do a bit of a deload week and chill the hell out and let this actually calm down before you start to run again. So if I were you, I would do a deload week and add in some calf isometrics really high in range where you're right up on your toes, okay? Single leg. You might even be able to add a little bit of a weight to make this a little bit trickier. We're going to do 3 rounds of 45 seconds, 2 or 3 times a day. The importance right now is to get on top of these Achilles. And the only way that you do that is by deloading and bringing back up something that's going to help to build up that tendon and not break it down. Another thing that you could look at is maybe some footwear in the day that's going to help to just raise your heel ever so slightly. Short term, a heel raise might be quite beneficial, or wearing shoes that have a bit of a drop on them, meaning that you can just keep your heel elevated, keep you out of that dorsiflexion area like this. That's going to also really help to calm this down. It might only need a couple of weeks of calming down, but I promise, if you just get on top of the load and stop overdoing it with the running so much, then you might be able to actually get on top of this fairly quickly. Just be patient and do the right thing. Okay, next question. Left sciatic pain down the back of my leg when I'm running. Geez, this is also a very, very tricky one. We have to determine where this sciatic problem is actually coming from. Like, is it the neural tension in that sciatic nerve that is not liking the way that you're stretching it and moving it? Is it the muscles themselves around the hips and the hamstrings that are just really locking down your movement and it makes you feel like these sciatic type symptoms? Or is it coming from the spine? Is it a lumbar spinal related issue that's giving you these pains in your legs? It could be either of them. Now, the first thing that I would do in this situation would be to check my lumbar range. Do I have any kind of like severe lumbar range restrictions? I'll show you what I mean for the range restrictions. So, do you have restriction into lumbar range? Is it painful, or is it extension? You've got side flexion like this, and you have rotation. If any of those are particularly grim, then you might have some spinal related stuff that's giving you these sciatic symptoms. Now, the next thing that I would check would be the neural tension itself. So the way that I would do that would be a single leg raise. I'm going to show you. Okay, so we get down here, we put our legs out. Now, most people feel sciatic type symptoms when they do this. They just feel like a big pulling, okay? The way that we figure out if it's muscle or nerve is we would add tension into the nerve system. So what I would do would be I would pull my toes back towards my head. If it gets worse, then it's neural related. And if it doesn't get any worse, then it's probably likely to be some hamstring related tension or tightness, or maybe you've had, previous muscle tears in there, and it's just not allowing this hamstring muscle to really do what you want it to do, okay? Now, the good thing is that all these things will improve with you improving your lumbar stability, your hip stability, and your core stability. So improving your strength in those areas are always going to help with anything related to sciatic type pains and stuff, because you're just increasing the stability of where that nerve is coming from, if it is actually the nerve. Now, if it's the muscle itself, you probably need to improve your mobility through that area. Maybe you need to get rid of the tissue that might be like scarred in there from previous injuries or muscle strains. Maybe you even need to increase the strength of that hamstring, because it's just not strong enough to handle the running and it's giving you these symptoms. But if it is neural related, you can do this kind of stuff. Okay, so we come back into this position, Please focus. There we go. And rather than bringing ourselves all the way up to the point at which it really, really hurts, okay, we drop down a little bit. You see how I can move all the way through range? Now, if it is neural stuff, if I bring my head up when I go like this, it's gonna get worse because I'm pulling the nerve there and here at the same time, so it's stretching the whole system. Gonna feel shit. So what we can do is take the head up, bring the foot down, take the head back, bring the foot up. Essentially what you're doing is taking this nerve and pulling it like this through the whole system. What I find is that people do really well with this kind of stuff because it just desensitizes this nerve to moving through particular areas where it's restricted. Try that out. Do it every day. And if you do find that it is coming from the back and you can reproduce those same symptoms by bending forward and stuff like that, you need to go see someone and get them to do a proper assessment on you to determine what you can actually do, because I can't help you over the internet with stuff like this, you know? There you go. Okay, the next one is pain on the outside of the hip for the last few months. It's bearable when running. You just feel it a little bit later in the day. Pain on the outside of the hip. So now this is a little bit tricky because there's a lot of stuff in this area. So if it's pain directly on the side, on this area here, then that's likely to be a gluteal tendon issue. So these big glute muscles go into a tendon that goes over the top of this muscle here. And so once again, it's just like the Achilles in the way that it just gets compressed against the bone, okay? Now the next thing would be if it's in this kind of area as opposed to there, in this kind of area, that is going to be more IT band related stuff, which is a little bit different. Now, if it's glute tendon pain, it's going to be very specific on that bone, and that's when you're going to feel it. Now, it's the same as any other tendon. It likes to have a deload, and then you just start doing slow, safe, isometric style exercises to begin with. The way that you can do that is by doing hip abduction. Side plank. A side plank is a hip abduction isometric, so you can do that just like this. Now, I sound like a broken record now, but most issues really are just a load related problem, especially things like IT bands. So the IT band connects your hip muscles and the muscles on the front of the side of your hip, basically, into a long, fat thing of connective tissue that connects next to your knee, okay? And so what that does is it allows the hip muscles to control the direction that the knee is facing. So, okay, so imagine that you're standing on one leg when you're running, okay? Now, the direction of the knee is actually controlled by the hip. You can try this yourself. All you have to do is put your finger on your glute muscles, okay? Stand on one leg or close to one leg, and then just drop your knee in and then drop your knee out. When you pull your knee out, you can feel that your glute muscles tighten up quite a lot. Now, what you can also see is that my foot arch, as my knee's dropping in and out, can also play a big impact on this IT band. If we're always like this when we're running, we're landing and then we're twisting in, it might mean that we actually have to fix the strength of the foot as well as the hip to improve the IT band. That's why physiotherapy and occupations like that can be quite a little bit trickier to manage people's conditions than just simply rest and then you're fixed, basically. And that is the beauty of the human body. There's complexity at the same time as simplicity, okay? All you guys have to do, if your injury wasn't discussed in this, is take a deload week, okay? Figure out what you can do to start to build up your resilience to the load that you're putting on it and improve over time. Be patient, or leave your injury in the comments below and we'll talk about it next week maybe. Comment below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.